Got a lot of trees. There's some cyber, this is cyber, so this is strictly cyber, this has to pay the All right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Gary Walters, Reinhardt Walters Dana Insurance. I'm the your agent. I've been your agent for some time now. I represent the Ohio plan. The Ohio plan is a pool program. We're a little bit different than traditional insurance. However, I would tell you we have a lot of safety features that traditional insurance carriers have. Our program is governed and supervised by its membership. We only insure public entities that qualify under Ohio Revised Code 2744. That was enabling language that allowed pools to be formed. In the late 80s, we saw really a hard market and came in and took out a lot of the traditional carriers. And when government entities were looking for insurance, they had a real difficult time finding coverage with traditional carriers. And the pools really are the leaders for coverage for insuring government entities. The Ohio plan insures all kinds of entities, so villages, townships, special district cities. We have special districts like water and sewer and fire districts. We have some libraries. We have some fairs. We have land banks. We have a number of different kinds of entities that are in our program. We are only insuring Ohio entities. We use reinsurance to back our product. So our program is backed by fully reinsured companies. They're all A plus rated carriers by AM Best. And that's our industry benchmark for financial security. There's a lot of assets that are backing our product. We're a non-assessable program. There are pools out there that do have assessment features in them. That is not our product. The price that you pay is the price that you pay. All of our reinsurers are contractually obligated to pay claim. You're really in a very financially secure program. The nice thing about our product is that it's more than just the insurance coverage. It's providing some risk management tools for you as well. So we have all kinds of resources that are available for the vast growth. If you have a need for playground safety reviews, if you have a need for just standard policies and procedures, we can help you with that. There's some affiliation with our product through LexPool. LexPool is a separate subscription, but because you're a high plan member, you get a discount off of that LexPool subscription, and that's specific for fire and police. And then we also subsidize that subscription for the first year. So there's some cost savings by joining LexPool. We'll just kind of start off before we go into the proposal, the Ohio plan proposal. We'll talk about the cyber after we go through the Ohio plan proposal. Our expiring premium last year for the Ohio plan, we started at $43,717. You received a $6,378 Ohio plan advantage credit. So the Ohio Plan Advantage Credit is our program surplus that we pay back to our members. It is a longevity credit. So you guys have been with us for quite some time. And it is also based on performance. So we do look at how your 4-year loss ratio is and your compliance with risk control. So you're getting a very nice credit back that helps offset your insurance costs. So last year, after the Ohio Plan Advantage credit, our premium was $37,339. During the policy term, we made some changes. Now, some of the changes we charge for, if they're made early on, some of them we do not. We just give you notification of the change, and then we just pick it up at renewal. So in January, we added a 24 Ford valued at $50,171. It was a $543 add premium to that 37,339. In January, we also added portable radios and equipment at $75,543, which was a $158 add. In May, we added a 25 Ford Explorer. We did not charge premium for that. Like I said early on, if it's early before the policy term or right around the policy term, we're going to make those endorsement changes during the policy term. We don't charge for that. That would have been a $543 add premium. We added the equipment on that 25 Ford, which would have been an additional $39. And then in September, we added a 25 Chevy Silverado, which would have been an additional premium of $458. So your total paid with the endorsements last year was $38,040. The premium, if the endorsements would have been annualized, would have been $39,080. Our total premium is up $436 over last. Very good renewal. That is well below what we're seeing in the marketplace. Market conditions have been driving renewal increases anywhere from 8 to 20%. So it just varies depending on your entity and how your results are. In fact, if you have good loss ratio, that's also impacting savings. So we did make some changes to some of the buildings. We did underwriting, looked at some of the values that we had on a few of the buildings. And we pushed them up a little bit greater than the 3% inflationary increase that we typically do on your property. So the service garage, we pushed up from $429,634 to $535,304, which is a little more than $105,000 additional value. But the police garage, we pushed up from $247,200 to $308,000. And then the municipal police building, we increased from $529,935 to $788,000. So we think that it's important to be pushing values up. Material costs are still high. Labor costs are still high. And it costs a lot more to replace. Our industry has seen, a pretty hard market cycle over the last several years. We're starting to see some carriers coming out of it though, which is a good sign. You probably were experiencing that on your own individual home and auto and business insurance. You probably were seeing, rate increases across the board from carriers. And that has been primarily due to the direct wind and tornado losses over the last few years. We had a lot of weather-related events that have been driving the direct loss ratio on the property. So we're seeing carriers taking rate on the property. The reinsurance market is also taking rate. And, when you think about the reinsurance market is essentially the insurance industry's insurance. If you came to me and said, Gary, I've got a $10 million property I need you to insure, I would say, fine. Carrier would give you coverage for 10 million. They might not keep all 10 million of that property. Take maybe the first 5 million layer of that and then seed the next 5 million to the reinsurance. So that's kind of the structure of how reinsurance is. And the reinsurers that are reinsuring domestically in the U.S. markets are also the same reinsurers that are reinsuring in foreign markets. And so when you see the wildfires in Canada, the hurricanes, that go through the Caribbean, the earthquakes in Japan, all those things get baked into the reinsurance cost. So the reinsurance costs rise, it gets passed to the insurance carrier, and then it gets passed to the consumer. So we've kind of had a perfect storm over the last few years as to what's been going on in the industry. But I'm happy to say that our program has fared very well, and what we're seeing from rates so they are replacement costs. Yeah. How do we handle roof claims? We do not depreciate roofs. There is that's going on in the industry right now. You have carriers that are putting a depreciation schedule. That is not what we do. It's going to be subject to your deductible. So, yep. So, if you go past our cover page, you can see our board of directors. And then on page 3, you can see where the coverage starts. So our blanket building and personal property limit is $19,341,802. So when we insure on a blanket basis, we're insuring all of your property that you own under one blanket form. So we're not talking about your autos, your vehicles, your equipment that goes on and off premise. Those are insured separately. We're talking about buildings. We're talking about the contents that typically remaining in those buildings. Okay. So a blanket works 2 ways. It works in whole for all of your property, and it works singularly for any one location. So technically, if we had a tornado that took this building out, we would have $19,341,302 that we could apply for this building. Okay. But there is a schedule that we have for property that helps us develop that blanket value. So the likelihood of us paying that is probably not real, because we're going to look at what the schedule was. Okay. There is no coverage for flood or earthquake. Those are perils that you can purchase. Just because you're not in floodplain areas, it doesn't mean you can't be susceptible to flood loss. So we do offer that. We offer flood and earthquake coverage up to $5 million in coverage. And your deductible typically is a little higher. It's $25,000 deductible. The other coverages that are in there, excuse me, battling a little bit of a cough today, so my apologies. Some other coverages: business interruption is covered up to $500,000. That's including extra expenses that you would incur because of a physical loss to your property. So not likely that you're going to incur lost revenues because of a loss to one of your buildings, unless you're renting that building and you're getting some rental income, something like that. You're going to use that, the proceeds from our business income and extra expense to help fund your contingency, which is to get you back into business and be able to provide services for your constituents. There's some coverage in here for ordinance or law up to $500,000, and that's covering increased costs that you may incur because of a code. The grandfather's code on some of the buildings, you now have to rebuild it with a new code, which will be an increased cost. Our deductible's $1,000. We're insuring on an agreed amount basis. So the insurance carrier and you agree that the values that we have are correct. Right? There's no co-insurance that's in our form. The additional coverages and extensions, that is our broadening endorsement. We do not charge a line item for any one of those items. It's just coverage that's built into our package. Some of the things that you'll see in there are going to be of value, and some of the things are not. I'm sorry. We have equipment breakdown coverage at the bottom of this. So if you had a off-premises power failure, let's say there's a car accident that takes out a transformer, and you get a surge power, fries, computers, phones, anything, electrical panels, we would have some coverage that applies under equipment breakdown. We're not covering normal wear and tear, so maintenance-related losses are not covered by insurance. This would be an accidental loss from an off-premises power failure. Pages 5 through 8 are your property schedule that makes up our total blanket. You'll see in that there's items that we list for building. You'll see items that we list for personal property, and you'll see property in the open. Just because you see a 0 next to personal property does not mean that you do not have personal property coverage at that location. The nice thing about a blanket form is that you can move contents from building to building without having to call us. Say, hey, we just moved 50,000 office equipment to this location. We're going to automatically cover it because of the blanket form. Okay. But things to consider for property in the open. Fire hydrants. In most cases, the damage is going to be caused by a car accident, and you're supposed to have insurance, but not everybody's driving with insurance. And if that happens, you could be responsible for replacing a hydrant. Hydrants are going to run over $5,000 to replace a hydrant today. Guardrails. Every once in a while, we'll see a public entity that has some guardrail that's not owned by the state or the county. You have that, you can insure that. Certainly, any street lights, your control boxes, the lights themselves, those things you can add. But it's things like that that we want you to think about that you have in the community that sometimes get missed. Okay? So. If you go to page 9, that is our special equipment, scheduled equipment that has a tendency to go away from premise. So the reason that we put it on an in the marine or scheduled equipment form is for that very reason. We cover it at the described premise or at one of the described premises or anywhere. So it can be away from premise, and we cover that. So it's going to be, like your mowers, it's going to be, backhoes, whatever you would have from the equipment that would have a tendency to go off premise. Okay. There's also some coverage for unscheduled miscellaneous equipment up to 60,000. And it's any one item of 15,000 in value or less. And that is also a repair or replacement possibility that we're using here. There's some coverage for computer at the bottom, so you can see what we have for hardware and software. The next page kind of shows what your deductible is, $500. Page 11, you can see the schedule. I encourage my entities to schedule equipment that's in and on vehicles. So if you have your police cruisers, certainly There's awful lot of equipment in and on those vehicles, so if we have a total on one of those, the chassis would get covered by the auto, and then the equipment that we have scheduled would be covered on replacement costs. So it gives you, puts you in a better position when you have to replace the entire unit. Same thing with any type of streets and road vehicle. If you have dump trucks, I encourage you to schedule your beds, schedule your plows, schedule your spreaders. I had an entity where the dump truck stalled on the train track, and the train came, took it out, and they got an actual cash value settlement on the chassis, and we got replacement cost on the bed, plow. So that's the reason why it's good to do that. If you jump to page 13, this is our crime section. I want to spend a minute on this. That right now we have coverage for public employee dishonesty that includes faithful performance up to $50,000. You have some theft of money on and off premise, forgery and alteration, computer fraud, funds transfer fraud. There's a little bit of social engineering coverage that's in here as well. Social engineering is that email you get from a vendor that says, hey, you can now you can pay this paper bill by ACH, or we've changed our deposit, please forward money to this account. You do that, and it's not really them, you've been social engineering. So that's what we're talking about there. But I want to spend a minute on the bonds, public employee dishonesty that includes faithful performance. So it is ORC that certain positions have a bond. So your fiscal officers are required to carry a bond. The mayor is required to carry a bond. If you have zoning, there's typically bonding for that. You could have a utility clerk that has bonds. So if you have a bond, the bond is really not insurance. It is insurance. So it's a three-party contract. You have the entity, you have the bond holder, and you have the surety. Surety will pay the entity to make the entity whole if there's a shortage of funds. So it can be from theft, it can be a finding for recovery that was levied by the auditor because of an error. A bond is always going to pay the entity to make the entity in the state whole. Okay. The rub with bonds is that it is a loan, essentially. Surety means that the bond is going to make the entity full, but the surety expects to be paid back by the bondholder. So it can leave a burden on the individual that's bonded. There's a duty of care with the position, a fiscal officer, and some of the other positions that are required by the state to have bonds. There was some recent legislation that was passed, I believe it's 2019, that allows entities to, by board resolution, to move away from bonds to a blanket employee dishonesty policy that includes faithful performance. The difference in the crime versus bonds, besides what I've already discussed, a bond has no exclusions in it. A bond is always going to pay. Okay. If there's a shortage of funds, that bond will cover it. A crime policy that includes faithful performance is an insurance contract. So there's an insuring agreement, and then there is also exclusions in that insurance contract. Okay. So if you would eliminate your bonds and go to faithful performance coverage, there is the potential of a claim not being covered because of the exclusions in the form. That makes sense? So, but the nice thing about the crime policy is that it's just two parties. It's the insurance carrier and you, the entity. The responsibility to pay back the insurance company does not exist. You would have a deductible if there was a loss. Okay. So it takes the burden off of the individual. But because it's really not a perfect solution either way. The Ohio plan has come up with a solution that we think is a good fit. You can leave your bonds. So the bonds that we have for fiscal officer at $35,000 and for the mayor at $5,000. Those are no cost bonds. We do charge a minimum premium for some of the other bonds that we have, but it's not a lot of premium we're charging for those. $50, right? You can leave your bonds in place, and we would make those bonds secondary coverage. And we would make the employee dishonesty policy the primary coverage. So we would have to push your prime policy up to 55,000 to cover all of your bonds. To do that, it was an additional $192. By doing that, it would mean that the prime policy would come into play before a bond would, meaning that the obligation of the individual would not be there to pay back if the prime policy covered. Make that coverage the primary coverage. In the event that there would be a situation where that finding for recovery does not trigger the prime policy, the bond would be your backup. It does not take the onus off the individual. The individual would still have to pay. But what it does is it doesn't create a situation where the village of Asheville could be left in an unfunded situation. Okay, so having both is a better way to go. It's a little redundant, but for a little bit of additional premium, I think it makes sense because it helps insulate your individuals and it also helps. Does that make sense? Okay, so page 14 is our liability coverage. We offer limits as high as 8 million occurrence with a 10 million aggregate. Our largest claim to date in the program since 1988 is a $5 million wrongful shooting claim. Law enforcement is the loss leader in the industry for claims. We are typically where the larger claims are at. I think their limits are good. Just know that we do offer higher limits if you are interested. Each liability coverage that we're talking about is a separate siloed limit. So you have separate occurrence and aggregates. We're not sharing aggregates across these coverages. You have your own occurrence and one aggregate in each line that we're talking. So the general liability is going to cover your operations, your product's completed operations, your premises liability, any bodily injury or property damage claim that can be brought against the village whether this is within our. There's some coverage in here for medical expenses. Yeah. So first dollar, goodwill. There is some coverage for employee benefits. If you make a clerical error in the administration of employee benefit, we cover that. Employer's liability, stopgap ties in with workers' compensation. So if an employee is injured on the job, the BWC pays the lost wages and injury. You can still be sued by your employee for intentional acts related to the injury. So for that reason, you need coverage for defense. We will defend you up until the point that the employee can prove to be deliberately hurt them. We do not cover deliberate acts. We cover the accusation with the defense. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say that you want to change the liability to the property.
Yeah.
If the chiefly increase when liability is here, and then
So we're not like traditional carriers, and that's a good question. A lot of traditional carriers are going to have underlying limits for your general liability, and you're going to have, an underlying limit for your public officials. You have an underlying limit for your auto. And that umbrella goes over top of those buckets of liability. Ours is separate siloed limits for each line. So if you increase the general liability, we're also increasing the public officials. We're also increasing the auto. So if we would go to a 5 million limit, each siloed limit would get pushed up. And it would be a 5 million, 7 million. And I would tell you that our rates are pretty reasonable for those excess limits. I can give you what those additional costs are. Okay. Jump to page 16, that is, the coverage for public officials liability, which is what covers all of you, for errors, omissions, wrongful acts, failure to act, breach of duty type claims. It is also covering employment practices liability, so wrongful termination, discrimination, sexual harassment, retaliation, EEOC complaints. There is some coverage for non-monetary defense, so injunctive relief type situations. We also have a separate limit for law enforcement liability. So wrongful pursuit, excessive force, wrongful entry, those types of claims. That's what we're talking. The auto coverage at the bottom is covering you for bodily injury and property damage caused to a third party. The collateral source rule applies to public entities. That is Ohio Revised Code. And, if you cause damage to, let's just say you're driving your truck, and you backing into somebody else's vehicle. Typically, we've been taught that, hey, you have to put that into your insurance carrier, and my insurance carrier is going to take care of your loss, which I talked about. That is not how Ohio Revised Code reads on the collateral source rule. So collateral source rule means that if there's other collectible limits of liability, then they have to go to their insurance carrier, and we would pay their out of pocket. That only applies to property damage, not apply to bodily injury. And we do get, questions. Hey, this is going to cause the claimant saying this is going to cause my rates to go up. The reality is it's not a fault accident. And insurance carriers, insurance industry is aware of this. We're going to settle claims the way ORC tells us to settle. Okay. So just make you aware of it. You don't have to deal with that. That's something that we would deal with. Our claims adjusters are very well for explaining how the crowds will deal with it. Okay. If you go to page 17, you can see the vehicle schedule. Deductibles are $500 for comp and collision. Tell you the vast majority of the vehicles on here are going to be actual cash value. You might have some trailers like 25, 23 cargo needs utility trailer, reinsured trailers, like the place the cost is. Page 20. You see there's cyber and it's saying no coverage. That's because we have a separate cyber policy. I'll have some folks that will talk about that at the end of this. Just continuing on with this, we have terrorism coverage for both property and liability. There are some additional interests we have in here. So CSX transportation, is that still, we still need to have them listed? Okay. On page 22, you can see we have coverage for malicious acts. So if something bad would happen, we can talk about it. But we do see it on the news. There's some coverage for everybody in the room. So there's death benefit. There's some coverage for counseling expenses, things like that. Page 24, it's just general conditions. Nothing different there. The newest condition that was kind of new to the industry is PFAS. So you're seeing that exclusion across the board with all carriers. They're worried about that becoming the next asbestos. The PFAS is found in a lot of products that we use our entire lives, Teflon, plastics. Worried about long-term stuff. Page 25 is the premium page. You can see what our package premium is and then what your Ohio Family Advantage credit is. So you receive nice credit, $7,680 of the Ohio Family Advantage credit. Page 26 is the reinsurers that back our product. Again, all A-rated companies by AM Best. We do share in a portion of the loss, so that footnote at the bottom is what our pool's retention is for the property and for liability losses before it goes to we have catastrophic losses. So if we would have Well, I'm just going back in 2021 or 22, we had a really, that Arctic vortex that had a really deep freeze. We had 40 to 50 entities that had frozen pipelines all over the state. We had one deductible in that situation. That was considered a cat loss for us. Okay, so that's how our product works. The electrical subscription, I kind of mentioned in the beginning, there's just some information in there if you're interested in that. Are you guys using electrical right now? Okay, so good. Okay. So the cyber, let's talk about that. So we use a wholesaler to help us with the cyber product. They have access to a multitude of markets, and they help us put this cyber market comparison together. So this cyber market comparison basically is talking about coverage forms and what some of the nuances and differences are between the two. Lloyd's and Hiscox are the two that we have quotes from. The current cyber product is through Hiscox. Hiscox is an admitted carrier in the state of Ohio, which means you are covered by the Ohio Guarantee Fund. Lloyd's is a non-admitted carrier, meaning you're not protected by Ohio Guarantee Fund. Ohio Guarantee Fund protects the consumer from carriers that can potentially become insolvent. You're protected by a Ohio Guarantee Fund up to 300,000. The max. Lloyd's is still very reputable. They're an A-rated company by AM Best. So that's really what I'm looking at when I'm looking at financial stability. I don't get too worked up over admitted versus not admitted. I would if the non-admitted was maybe a B rating or something like that. I mean, bringing that to you. But Lloyd's has a product that is going to match up pretty well. One exception, the cyber extortion limit is at 50,000. I don't like that, but that is what they do. Hiscox, you have $4 million covered for that. The difference in price. Last year, the Hiscox expiring premium was $1,609.40. The renewal this year came in at $4,096. Cyber is one of those markets that's up and down. Lloyd's, their option came in at $3,442.40. So it's a lower cost option. There are some bells and whistles in the Lloyd's product that aren't in the Hiscox, but I think the biggest difference is that cyber extortion piece. Cyber extortion is that if you get compromised and through ransomware and they lock you out of your access to your information. So then they charge a ransom fee and start extorting. That's what we're talking about. So there is some laws out there now that you have to be compliant with by July of 26, or at least starting the process. You need to have an incident response plan, so an IRP needs to be put in place. If you need help with that, I have a third-party resource that can help you with that. They can do an initial analysis for you. It's relatively inexpensive, $600 with charges, and then can help you get on your way to cyber for the most part is cyber. You have coverage for first-party expenses, which are going to be if you would have a breach, you have an expense associated with notification. You're going to have expenses for credit monitoring, forensic analysis. You could have PCI fines. You can have regulatory fines. All those things would be part of the first-party coverage. A business interruption associated with a breach. That's all part of the product. Third-party liability is if you get sued by somebody because of the breach, they have damages. The big issue today is cybercrime. So we talked a little bit in the Ohio plan, there's some coverage for, in our crime form, up to 25,000 for social engineering. The cyber product that we have is giving you a much broader limit, it's 100,000 of coverage. I think. You look here. Lloyd's may offer up to 250,000 in that area. Let's see if it- Yeah, his tax is 100,000. Lloyd's. Lloyd is also 100,000. So, again, the big differentiator, I think, is the cyber extortion. But some may not view that as a big deal, and they want to take the savings. So
What do you
question.
think the coverage difference-
Good.
What do you think the coverage difference is between those and
the coverage difference, the primary one that I see in there is that Hiscox is providing $1 million for extortion type loss. Lloyd's sublimits the extortion loss to 50,000, so it's a significant difference. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you said at the beginning of that conversation, there was something at the state level that was coming from, which one was that? It sucks.
Oh, no, they're both, no, there's a separate vendor that I can introduce you to that can help you get prepared for what the state has passed. Which is separate from, they both of these companies have some resources available for you. That will do like some scanning and making sure that you don't have your emails out there on the dark web. They do that. A lot of them will let you know where you may have some deficiencies, but some of the thing that's coming down the state is much broader. It's you're going to have to do penetration testing. You're going to have an incident response plan, which means you have to have something formalized. And, you'll need to be able to know what to do when you have a breach. That's the whole intent.
We just talked about the example of endorsement.
Yes.
And I was thinking about something.
Yep.
That the pen testing in the IRP, that's an Ohio requirement for all.
There's, yes, it is coming. So you're supposed to be compliant by July of 2026. But the conversations that we've had with the auditors is that, they're not auditing on it. It's going to be next year, it'll be 27. when it start out. So. That's what we've got. Oh, I know that you had asked a question about excess layers, so give me a second. So for instance, if you wanted to go to the next layer, which would be a 4 million occurrence with a 6 million aggregate, the additional premium would be $1,122. And that would increase your limits across the board in each category. If you wanted to go to a 5 million, 7 million limit, it would be an additional $2,243. Okay. So in essence, it's about $1,122 for each layer.
So based on the recommendation, we thought we were okay, but we could probably benefit from that.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard for me to sit here and tell you that you don't need higher limits. I can only look at what our program has seen statistically. I would tell you industry wide right now, there has been carriers are really pulling in their horns on the excess layers because it used to be, and it sounds kind of morbid, but when I worked for the insurance carrier on the carrier side, they had a formula for loss of life. They knew what, and so it was very rare that you would see umbrella layers that were in that 3 million range or higher getting pierced. It would normally be the underlying limit and then maybe the next layer, maybe the next couple. Right now, because of jury makeup, at least there's a different mentality. You have some different generations that view things differently, view corporations and that view public entities differently. And so there's been more nuclear verdicts than ever before, where they're actually, if you've got a 3 million limit, they're gonna award it. Got a 5 million, they're gonna award it. You also have litigation funding right now. So litigation funding, is essentially helping people pay for the cost to go to court, keep it in court rather than, getting settled fast. Attorneys are playing the long game, looking for larger settlements, and that's what's going on. The litigation funding gets no cut of the award, which is kind of perverse, but it's,
Do you have a minute for the defense cost if you get sued?
your defense is included in the limits. So we have a per occurrence and an aggregate. But I can tell you again, historically, largest claim to date's 5 million lawful shooting. We have a 5 million limit. We've seen some claims, a handful of claims that have been in the 2 to 3 range. But law enforcement, public officials are typically on the lost.
If ever this beginning, litigation will begin.
So, yeah, so it's a good question. So sometimes we don't see, suit being brought until later. If the loss occurred when we had coverage in place, even if you would move the insurance from this program, if the loss occurred in that time frame that we had covered, we would still have a responsibility to pay it. That is one of the things that makes us different than some of the other programs that are out there. The public entity pool is one of our competitors, and their product is a claims paid product, which means you have coverage while you're with them. As soon as you leave, all claim expenses are responsibility of the party member, regardless of whether you reported a claim to them while you're insured. So you have to have the claim resolved before you can leave the program. It's not, that's just the business. A good question. So we would provide defense as soon as we receive suit papers. We do have to in our the ability for you to access some free legal counsel. It's employment related situation. We can have up to 2 hours. Are some benefits in our program. So, quick question: you this with this coverage? It's gonna be a nice thing. We have wages paid for someone who's paid off leave for this. The wages covered in it could be an employment related situation. Yes, yeah, it depends. I hate to answer in certainties because anytime you have a claim that's based on the merit of the claim being brought forward, you have to weigh that against the insuring agreement and the exclusion. So I can't give you answers definite. I can give you answers that yes, employment related taxes are covered, subject to the policy. Okay. Any questions, anything else we want to cover?
Return to policy.
Yeah, so on the cyber related, you know, I know that that's a significant increase from the Hiscox, premium. But it is not out of line, with what's going on in the cyber marketplace. And you'll see carriers kind of go up and down with that. The difference, though, I think with that cyber extortion piece, that concerns me a little bit.
The two policies are pretty much out of that.
With the exception.
So for nobody compared to 50,000, that would be paying 60.
So, and you're also with an admitted carrier with Hiscox versus a carrier. I mean, if I had my choice, I would say admitted before not admitted. But again, I don't want you to get hung up on admitted, not admitted, as long as not admitted is financially secure as well as it is. So, okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate your business. Please call me if there's anything that comes up, you have questions after the meeting, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You have some signature pages that I need.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree.
Here, I did have one more thing. Is it possible to get PDFs of the document? Absolutely. Okay. Yep. You ready to do that? And I'll ask you one more question. So what's the timeline that we have to make a decision?
So policy, we got our plan to be on 1/1. So, the cyber, renewal is March renewal. It's a different effective date.
Is it March 1 or is it March 31?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Sorry, but I didn't understand these.
You know what you say, but
Yeah. I'm sorry, I think it's a 3-year. It's a 310.
our next meeting, I'll have it up for vote.
Well, we have to, because we're dealing with, wholesalers, coverage doesn't automatically renew like the Ohio Fund does. We have to give them the instruction on the effective date before that. So you don't have to have it paid. We just need a decision on which way you want to go. We can bind it. There's time. Yeah. Just like it is with the Ohio Fund. We bound coverage in January. So whenever you have your meeting, it can be perfect ones.
We pay, we pay, we pay, January 1. Okay. It's got to be.
Well, yes, it is still showing on my books as a collect, as a collector. Yeah, that's just typical for what we do because we realize that meetings aren't always in the field cycle.
Well, we would be before we would, yeah.
I did, yes. You would not have wanted me here because I didn't have codes. Not fun.
We'd have to bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Jim.
Still good, but, the resolution. The language of budget report. Fully, vote. It's the registration of the resolution, it's the second reading. And the first reading is 2026.
Make the motion for a second reading.
This is resolution selecting 10 weekly for membership of the Pickaway County 911 program review committee. And that'll be up for the third reading and vote in the next meeting. The reading is over. Committee report. We have to act on the committee. And we just want to do it. It's the 26th. So, if we can, the big list of the project. That's a corrected version that you have. There's got the things that I want to wear, and it's funding, the journey, there's change. And so, if you look at that, and have a motion to approve the committee appointments, and that's I would appreciate it. One second.
Second.
All in favor? If you, now. There's the.
Let me quickly ask for the Parks and Recs. We are one of the meet, we're trying to schedule. But we'd like if we could put it on the agenda for this coming Friday. Are you able to get it posted for this Friday, 5:30 here in the building? We have some outside community people that want to meet with us Tuesday. They've got a nonprofit that they started for special needs. We want to get involved with the parks. So I'm going to reach out to them and see how they can be aware. This will not really have an agenda, we'll be more of a meet and greet. Post that out. Okay, we'll get you.
We said one or two items. I think we should touch on.
Yes, we do, we have a grant. Tell Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions are, Mayor, we knew the whole was at 5 p.m. on 3
Well, that's a question I wanted to ask. You know, if we need to come up with the times to review the next council. I was thinking we could use the early committee as a whole. In the plan, kind of takes time to get into. If we can, whatever goes the best, and like, not those. And we just remember this body, we love it. And try to get through it, see if there's any direction, if you want to know. Is it whatever? I'm sure that we've got, the fountain, it's good. Which is, we believe it's good. And we need that to. And we can go through that, it's for sure the time you got. But we.
And I can safety if I have a problem.
Okay, so we can post down. North and south, right, at the next meeting. Probably, each other. And we just need to do it, we discuss it, we can get in these posted. I think that you might want to work with and put it down. But I'm actually, we don't do it, we didn't really do it.
We're talking about what's coming.
Yes. I thought that was,
No, that makes sense.
something.
We can't anybody with new formal policies.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah. And then at some point, we need probably to do the same thing and talk about, some of these shifts and the seasons, all that stuff, so you guys can go forward through. And we can do that kind of at the same way. A lot of times, 30 minutes, is not enough time to do it. So, okay. Are you ready?
Roger, like the tip stuff, and the MTA, and the other thing. Probably have to put you in favor.
Okay.
You need to do the direct expression to economic development, that time. Bring it out there,
Mhm.
we can explain to you the benefits and how to use one to pass the other. And
They need family. Do
Do that. But yeah, we'll do our best. I'll talk with them if you can come, that night. We'll check their we'll try to get them fresh, and I wanted to do it. That's what he was supposed to talk about the last time, and maybe the whole one, so going back to the field. But once we got up there, started.
If we need to review this,
No, he's just going to explain to you the difference and how you can use one to came together.
we don't have to do that.
It's economic development. It doesn't have to be executive session. It can be out in the open. But usually you don't have a lot of time in the meeting.
Right, well, what I'm wondering, it's supposed to go from music council to the next meeting of the whole.
It's a big one.
So it's now you've got the
Obviously,
committee,
we'll
the
have
whole
questions
5:30.
and stuff.
Yeah.
More time on it too.
Yeah.
What's that for, six? And I guess we would do the first.
It's still doing 5:30 committee, a whole lot, 3:30.
Yeah, that'll be tip.
That'll be 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 to be.
Something happens, we can't make that.
Then we'll go back to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the three chief. That's a really big one, too. That's it? Okay. Question came up in the last meeting about the process and reacting to. One statement here is put together, explaining. First off, there's no written procedure for emergency appointments or something like this. Basically, you follow the high revised code. It basically says that it's the mayor of the department and council can choose the district. And what happens here is after the meeting on February 2nd, is going to January meeting. Three officers changed the meeting after the meeting. Conservatives, they don't have any leadership on the day shift because at that point, we didn't have any food. How long the chief and the detectives were going to be on leave being reacting to something with the field. So it's apparent then that it was going to be. So we sat down, we talked to them, and they recommended the acting chief to reappoint. Now, even though he's always been there for 1 month, he had 20-some years experience as a service police and sheriff. And a lot of them here to particularly wisdom from the road patrol and the jail, etc. So he had the experience and confidence of the right and time. So I sat down in this morning with the acting chief and, human resources, for the Samantha, for the village. And we talked through the issues and then the temporary appointment. Because they just didn't know, and I still don't know for sure, how long the chief and captain will be on route. I was hoping to start with the one generous. We just couldn't do. So, we talked through the issues, and he was going to do it on a short-term basis. So, we did make the appointment, we brought the council, and the resolution, and it was approved, I believe, 5-1. It's a meeting. And it was just the best thing for victims of prison. As I was stating here, keep acting chief Kingston has some 21 years of experience in police and prison. So he knows qualified. The only other person qualified to be an acting chief on those shift was a person who gives them 2 weeks notice. And has since rescinded that notice and sent it. So that is a process. And basically, it's the same process for appointing chief. The mayor makes the appointment, and then council can either approve it and listen to it, disapprove it, finding higher than that fit. Now, there were some other questions that were covered. And I was looking for several of those questions. I cannot answer. Because they are regarding further ways. In this case, it's in litigation. So I cannot answer. First question is, why was the newest and least experienced officer finished their roles of temporary captain, which was temporary chief? And what was the criteria? And I just explained, criteria and what. The second one is, why did the department certainly before the march with a criminal record? What is ANSPR's policy firing officers require legal or disciplinary action? I'm not sure if you were speaking of it. I have an idea, I don't know, you want to submit the question for me, and state the person, help them answer the question. Why has the senior, most senior officers in this country from now to week? What operation is driving the change? My understanding is that Harvard made they have to have, if they want to have a medical officer, on each shift, or they go to go to. Captain and the chief were on first shift, because the captain is relatively new, because he was training somebody on the government stream. So it got second and third shift. If I understand it, Officer Ray, was given further, was given the option to be given the, he did not choose. So, what's the point for you? You would sit on a third shift, and at least, yep, it's still the man, it's still there with something who is ready to get. That's what's going to. Are the officers being scheduled and allocated efficiently based on active qualifications? The police chief is in charge of the police department. The mayor oversees the doesn't get into the day-to-day stuff. So don't replace the very person, and that's the only thing to have. Several residents, not just myself, are concerned about the treatment of Officer Donnie. I can't talk about that because it's on the thing with me. What is the current policy on sick time? In effect, it's also to the legal defense to fund. The best officer says this. Next question. May. Goes back to third May. The human resources. Is what they do. And if you want to submit that question, I can have everything. So those are the answers to the best of my ability. Those questions. So we decided that the committee as a whole is going to March second, is a 5:30. And right now, it's expressed, it's simply going on. If that can't work out, then we're going to remove it. I have some very now, you want to go through those,
Mayor,
Yeah.
before we move on, we'll talk about this, not gonna go into that.
um, yeah, I do want to make sure all the committees need to at least have some sort of meeting and three to chairman. Some of these committees, we need for us meetings. The rules of practice every month, and that's not good. If you don't know what you're talking about, it's not, you just don't meet. So if each committee would just try to face the really problem and have organizational meeting for each chairman, and then you can decide. I know parts committee is going to be pretty good. And the rest of it, I have a referral that I want to refer this evening, because the commission on something to get to that. We're getting now, do you want to explain that?
I have two of them actually. There's only one on the agenda, but I had no one. So, the one on the agenda is the, and it's for their legal services for the economic development and the data center project. There's actually two invoices that total the amount of $39,438.
Question, just a more tactical question. Are, we pay them on time and material, do we have a retainer, certain bucket of hours of time we left there? It's by the hour, so every time, every 15 minutes then. And what time period, so?
One was for work number, the other one is for work. Yeah, and the second one is also. Chart the solicitor. So I have been in this year for total $10,602. And then the rest. And regular solicitor.
Same birds by the hour.
So. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's get it. Yeah, couple of arguments. Young.
Hi, everyone, it's Rick Brushhard, Harrison Township, and I just wanted to show up tonight. First of all, I wanted to say thank you. I know that this, starting really in December and going through, this year, it's been difficult. I'm sad that David isn't here because I really wanted to let him know that the sentiments that we had at the last meeting really spoke to me. That's how I feel as well. And I also want to say I enjoyed getting to talk with Daryl Glick, and I know that you put prayer and to your thought and to your vote, and I appreciate that. I want to still let you know that Harrison Township really does want to be good neighbors. We want to know each other, what we're doing, what's going on, and I think there's a couple of things that could precipitate that. One being PPA, which several of you on this board are involved with. I think that's a positive thing. I also would like to encourage, meeting and talks to resume on the CETA. We all, have put money, time, sweat, energy for the last 2 years into this, and we were really like this close. It helps me as vice chair for, zoning in Harrison Township, because that's what we do. And to be using a 2012 CETA use agreement is just, it's time. So I would just encourage, I know South Bloomfield's ready, I know Harrison Township's ready. I would encourage Asheville to just resume the meetings so that, we can get things finalized, whether there's changes that need to be made or whatever, to get it on the books, to get it done, to get, the check mark done. And then also just on another note, I spent some time with, Mayor Clark in regards to the design review board. This is something that you're gonna see. It's a new standard. Harrison Township, we've had it now for about 2 years. Most townships have it, and I really think that Asheville is behind the time when you guys need to get together and orchestrate or decide what that looks like for Asheville. I would certainly love to help you with that. I helped form one in Harrison. And, we've utilized a lot from New Albany, from Pickerington, from Roseport, but it has helped. We've had 2 applicants so far that have gone through that process. It goes to the design review board first before it goes to zoning, so that the applicant knows, hey, Harrison Township wants to see 15 feet of mounting instead of, 10, or they want to see downcast lighting, or these types of trees, are more prevalent that would help with screening. Used this phrase before, but it just kind of puts lipstick on the pig, if you will. It helps some symmetry and design, especially with Northern Pickaway, with Asheville, with South Bloomfield. Having a flow. I mean, you guys look at New Albany. I mean, it's the white picket fence, but that tells you the designs, the colors, that kind of thing. So I really think that it's not only beneficial to the township, but also to the applicant, because they know ahead of time what is going to be expected of them, and they put their plan together utilizing those things, and so it's a win-win. Some of the things that we learned, and I think I shared this with you, you have to watch your verbiage. I mean, it has to be, we want these trees, but they need to be maintained. Because guess what? If trees die and you don't have that word in there, they won't have to replant them. So I just kind of wanted to do a summation and just, again, I'm Harrison Township. I'm not part of Asheville, so I didn't want you to think that, I come to every meeting, that I'm not still in this. I know that growth is coming. I know that if we're just community driven about it and smart and how we're embracing that growth and do it together, it's a win-win partnership. That's all it's really one
I
thing.
think that, obviously, the zoning board needs to look at the stuff, but there are standards when they get the first line. And you will
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something we can integrate to deal with the community and move on, come up with the first process, right? You spend a lot of time putting it together. It's inspection.
That's one question for your design report. Who sits on that? This is our design, right? Who else sits on that?
So we have several residents, and I can't. There's like 7.
Residents is fine. but
Yeah,
just-
residents, and then an elected official, and also our zoning inspector. So, and if he'll share that, you guys have to come up with your own plan, but we wanted it to be zoning appeal, residents, elected officials, and it really helps because you're getting different perspectives. And zoning always supersedes clearly, but it helps the zoning board and it helps the applicant if it's like, well, this is kind of what we want to see. And, it's a give and take. They come right to the board with, well, this is what your design review board said. We're going to be working in creams, tans, greens, evergreen, slope mounding is the new thing right now, where instead of it just being one big mound all the way around, it's sloping and you're putting different type of colorful trees in there to help. Signage is a big thing. Lighting is a big thing. So zoning always supersedes that, but you're right. It's the shade of the lipstick. It's the colorful things that also help. And that's why it's called design.
Thank you.
Ryan Jones. You know me?
Yeah. I just have one more thing to do with Harrison Township. First, I want to say, I love the passion for Harrison Township. We're all here. And yes, growth is coming. And one thing we find out is Columbus is closer than ever. I mean, they purchased that land in '97, so somewhere back in the '70s, they had a long-term plan. They think 50 years in advance. I don't think the village national is every couple of million a year. And we need to think more. And my thoughts on Harrison Township is growth is coming, we get pinched by Columbus here, we get pinched by Asheville here. Which entity do you have a better voice to go on one of the councils? Do you as Harrison Township, if you get joined by Columbus, are you going to be a member of the Columbus Council to make a decision? I want my fellow friends and roommate or classmates and everything else from Harrison Township to eventually join us here in Asheville. And that way, somebody with your passion should be here, putting everything forward. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We need to get Harrison Township absorbed into Asheville as quickly as possible before you become Columbus, and you will have no say. And that's just something I want to share with you because I do applaud you. Your passion, you've been here since every meeting, and I applaud that. I want that passion in Asheville. I don't think you'll be able to have a voice in Florence. Thank you.
That was your point.
Yeah, I have a couple. Thank you for putting together the answers. Everything involved, so I appreciate that. I know it sounds like it was kind of like a one-off scenario with the scheduling and shooting and everything, but the only thing I would reiterate is we need to really try and make sure that we don't have our entire management team on one shift. If something like that were to occur again, we're going to try to avoid that if possible. As Brian mentioned, the three of us are involved in the PPA on council. Definitely have been involved in several meetings. We are restructuring that to where it will be essentially pretty much about the official, we're still putting the bylaws and everything together. I think the plan is that we would like to, you're not just the just. We'd like to invite other customers to see what that looks like. We do have a plan for definitely something that we're going to be involved with. Around the corner, we will have a resolution coming through for intergovernmental sharing need, which essentially is municipalities working together, providing to each other. And for example, if we happen to commercial community, they don't have a truck, or a fire truck, and that's something like that we can fund it. So that was something that we're looking on through there. But again, it's kind of want to make you guys aware that you may, yes, anything we have there,
Whatever is that you know what, and so work on it.
yeah,
We have to do it. The following can serve as being the one thing. We're going to use it.
several times, meeting something.
We're
What reason for them is going to be approach.
It's not really just. And then, so, it's just really important. It's like,
Basically, to your point there, once I have something that's clean, with it, so support, I definitely bring it up. Yep. And then lastly, there's been talks of the, looking at the, substation for person, there's some talks about department, it's not really good. Is there anything that we can look into to potentially help with that, or, anything that we can do possibly to put that forward?
The big problem is they're only a third person. Those guys do. We get a little bit different service for the fire department, it's all we get. We don't have that, we don't have the fire department, we're not having people, we have the fire department. I don't think Mary and myself, if they don't have any issues with finding money, but there's a ability that we have. Absolutely no use of. It's not fair to people back to. That's not everybody. Do I think we should share a little bit more? I think we should maybe do 50-50, then you help the fire department, because that's the person that does stuff. Yeah. I don't. With all the expenditures and stuff like that we're currently at this point in time, I think there's a way on the board, and just to come up with $500,000 for. It's not good time. It's a great thing, like the certain projects, I need to find money for engineering, because if you never start the project, we have to do $300,000 for stuff. There's a lot going on, in fact, you can't stop all. That money is supposed to go through.
Yeah, I would need one to support like 50-50 on that.
That was
Something,
330.
yeah,
And
something.
then that's just not. Right now, it's just not a comfortable spot.
to be honest with it's the issue. I got a call, and I think it's very recent, the mayor, saying, black anything wants to do with it. We're going to do the same thing. And they're going to have fire department to not really meet. If they were going to do it. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't go for that because that's land to the cost for that building. We don't live it on, we get some new building. Then I found out that it's referring to the service. Fire department service. Still, as it works there, the government was split, and it's us. So, yeah, we're in favor, they're trying to get us some. Well, he made the decision that our school now would be $350,000. Which is transferred to the citizens to fund it. We could increase $350,000. That's not the way conditions. But you got the other way. It's something I'm not sure that, I don't know if those units are the state funds, because I saw it in the law. So this is what we do. There's some disagreement on the numbers. And then we have to come up with those expenses. Thank you.
I just came from, and they talked about the spirit thing. And, I guess Brian Stewart said that the ticket was somebody about $3 million now. And this grant is possibly like 1.5 or something, and that's what they were looking at splitting, and I know Harrison Township kind of goes, like you guys do, so, maybe this.
Well, you've been talking with Chad. We're trying to get somewhere.
So,
I feel like we should help out. I don't feel like
Yeah.
putting further out of the makes sense.
there's a big, that's big type of work with that. I think the 25th, if there's much really something. They need to be done.
And I think there's also accelerated timing.
Yeah.
Things like that can be approved up in March.
March the call.
No March, so I mean, it's like moving fast.
Yeah, and that was part of this, well, when we all get meetings with them. We need to do this record.
Nothing really to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to. What you were saying about the cooperation, you know. We have some cooperation, just, because ourselves, those are the biggest thing, and those are. DHL wants to become, those are rough edges, you can't, still. What a motion to them.
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.